Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking this sprawling, beautiful chaos of life on Earth and transforming it into a neatly structured story of biological taxonomy. You know, if you've ever looked at a galloping horse, a dense valley of flowers, or honestly, just the houseplant sitting in your living room and wondered how it all connects, well, you're absolutely in the right place. Let's get right into it. So check out this staggering number. Scientists have currently described somewhere between 1.7 and 1.8 million different species. I mean, just pause and think about that scale for a second. That's nearly 2 million completely distinct forms of life, ranging from the absolute deepest, darkest oceans to the freezing peaks of mountains. And the wild part? That's just what we've found so far. It really reveals the incredible, almost overwhelming scale of biodiversity all around us. To make sense of all this overwhelming variety, here's our game plan. We'll start with the chaos of biodiversity. Then, look at how we solve the naming problem, break down the rules of binomial nomenclature, explore the actual science of taxonomy, and finally, we'll climb the taxonomic hierarchy together. Starting with Section 1, the chaos of biodiversity. Because obviously, before you can organize the world, you kind of need a framework. And one of the absolute pioneers of this framework was Ernst Mayr, a legendary evolutionary biologist out of Harvard. Mayr spent a nearly 80-year career unraveling the origins of species diversity. His research spanned the whole shebang, from ornithology, studying birds, all the way to the philosophy of biology. He almost single-handedly made the origin of species diversity the absolute central question of evolutionary biology, which, by the way, it still is today. Mayr was actually so influential that he earned a pretty massive title, the Darwin of the 20th century. He's widely considered one of the 100 greatest scientists of all time, largely because he pioneered the definition of a biological species that we still accept today. The guy literally won the Triple Crown of Biology prizes before passing away at the age of 100. Talk about a legacy. Moving right along to Section 2, solving the naming problem. Because think about it, with millions of species out there, how do we even talk about them without getting hopelessly confused? The core issue is that local names vary wildly by region. A bird known by one common name in New York might be called something completely different in London, let alone in Tokyo, and that causes endless global confusion. So to fix this, scientists created standardized scientific names, using incredibly strict international codes. For plants, we rely on the International Code for Botanical Nomenclature, or ICBN, and for animals, taxonomists use the International Code of Zoological Nomenclature, the ICZN. This whole global standardization process is what we call nomenclature. But here's the catch. Naming is only possible when an organism is correctly described and identified first. I mean, you can't name what you don't understand, right? Once that crucial identification happens, nomenclature steps in to ensure that a specific organism has one and only one globally recognized name. Let's dive into Section 3, Rules of Binomial Nomenclature. We're going to look at the elegant set of rules used by scientists everywhere. To completely solve this naming crisis, the brilliant Carolus Linnaeus introduced binomial nomenclature. Just like it sounds, this is a super convenient two-word naming system that brings perfect order to the biological world. It was a total game changer, and it proved so effective that biologists across the globe still practice it today. Now, there are strict universal rules governing every single scientific name to ensure total consistency. First up, biological names are generally Latinized and printed in italics. The first word is always the genus, and it has to start with a capital letter. The second component is the specific epithet, which starts with a lowercase letter. Oh, and a fun little detail for anyone taking notes out in the field, when you handwrite these names, both words must be separately underlined to show their Latin origin. Let's ground this with a delicious example. The scientific name for the mango is Mangifera indica. Mangifera represents the genus, so boom, it's capitalized. Indica is the particular species, the specific epithet, so it stays lowercase. Sometimes you'll actually see the author's name abbreviated right at the very end, like Lin for Linnaeus, just to show who described it first. Which brings us to Section 4, the science of taxonomy. Now that we know how to identify and name a single organism, let's zoom out and look at the broader science. Since it is literally impossible to study millions of living organisms individually, we have to group them into convenient, observable categories. Whether we're talking really broadly about plants or mammals, or drilling down specifically to dogs or wheat, we call these scientific categories taxa. And taxa can represent categories at very different levels. For instance, a dog is a taxon, sure, but mammals are also a taxon, and dogs fit right inside that mammal taxon. This entire process of grouping is taxonomy. But taxonomy isn't just about making simple lists. Far from it. It is a dynamic, modern science. It relies on examining external and internal structures, cell structure, developmental processes, and even ecological information. All those observations feed directly into 4 foundational pillars: characterization, identification, classification, and finally, nomenclature. But hey, we don't just want to sort things into boxes. We want to know exactly how they relate to each other. Human beings have always been deeply curious about these relationships, which leads us perfectly into the study of systematics. The term actually comes from the Latin word systema, meaning systematic arrangement. Linnaeus even used Systema Naturae as the title of his famous publication. Systematics basically takes taxonomy a huge step further by factoring in the evolutionary relationships between organisms. Finally, we hit section 5, climbing the taxonomic hierarchy. Time to connect the dots and ascend the nested ladder of life. See, classification is definitely not a single step. It's a massive nested hierarchy where every single step represents a specific rank or category. We start way down at the bottom with species. That's a group of individuals with fundamental morphological similarities. Then we group similar species into a genus. Genera that share traits get bumped up into a family. Families go into an order, orders into a class, and classes into a phylum, or if we're dealing with plants, we call it a division. Naturally, as you go higher up this list, the number of common characteristics between the organisms starts to decrease. And sitting right there at the very top of this ladder is the kingdom. This is the highest, absolute broadest category. All animals from various phyla belong to the kingdom Animalia, while all plants from various divisions belong to the kingdom Plantae. It's the ultimate umbrella under which all related life forms gather. Now this right here beautifully summarizes our entire journey today. It lays out the complete taxonomic paths for humans, houseflies, mangoes, and wheat, all side by side. Just look at the path for humans. Man is Homo sapiens, the genus is Homo, the family is Hominidae, the order is Primata, the class is Mammalia, and the phylum is Chordata. You can track exactly how a housefly or a little wheat plant scales that exact same ladder. It is such an incredibly elegant system of organization, allowing us to map out the entire living world. As we wrap up this explainer on the beautiful order of biology, I want to leave you with one final, thrilling thought. We've spent all this time talking about the 1.7 to 1.8 million species we have so brilliantly cataloged, named, and slotted into this hierarchy. But considering the vastness of our deepest oceans and the unexplored depths of our rainforests, what bizarre, completely unknown taxa are just waiting out there in the dark for us to find, identify, and finally give a name? Thank you so much for exploring the living world with me today. Keep wondering and definitely keep looking closely at the life around you.